What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the 4M Ranch channel. Today I'm going to be going over a few things on my Stihl Combi Posol attachment. As you know, I bought this back in spring of 2018 and I've been using it pretty extensively lately, and it's time to do some servicing to it. The first thing I'm going to be doing is I need to replace the chain drive sprocket, which is located under this cover. And also I'm going to be replacing some of the grease and stuff that's in the gear head here. So I'll have to take this off the pole, disassemble it, and I'm going to clean some of the old grease out and install some new grease and put it back together and clean it up. So stay tuned. This particular head is off of my KM HT Combi pole saw, and I'm going to change out the sprocket and show you how I grease the gears inside this head here. So basically what you want to do first is, if I like to remove the pole off here, so what you want to do is loosen these two screws, and then the pole slide out, and then you're just left with this. So I've already removed this for simplicity of the video, but remove this cover, take your bar and chain off, and then you'll get your Torx wrench here and loosen the screw. And this sometimes can be pretty hard to get off. Then you'll remove these three little washers here, this little plate here, the sprocket, and then the bottom plate. Now if you notice, these are flat on both sides. So what I do is I take a crescent wrench and I put on there when I go to loosen this nut, and you can get it off pretty easy. Then you'll notice these four little screws. I got four of these, and they go. First one you have to take out is here. Then you can remove this plate. Then you'll have another one here and another one here. You can remove this plate. Then you got three big screws on the bottom. Just remove those. Once you got those screws removed, you simply take this and kind of wiggle it out. Be careful with your oil pump gear here. And then this is the head. So basically with this, all you really need to do, or what I do, is make sure that the bar oil hole is good and cleaned out. Clean this slide and stuff here out. Put a little grease on the tension tightener. Just make sure all these little holes here for the bar oil where it comes out is clean. Go ahead and clean any wood shavings or anything out that might be stuck down here in this filter. Just inspect your little hoses here, make sure none of them are getting dry rotted or have a crack in them. And make sure this little pump turns good and smooth. That's basically about it with that. Well, there's another little shield I forgot that I already had off, but it sits in here on top like this, and it's just, you just simply pop it off. Once you get your screws and stuff out, just start at this back corner here and just pop that out, and it comes off. So with this unit here, I don't know, I don't think you're really required to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Peel this apart, and once you get down to this, these bearings and these little gears here, it'll be packed with some grease. So what I've done is I've taken and cleaned all the old grease out, and I got some new Stihl multi-lube that I'm going to repack these bearings and these gears with when I put it back together. So when I do that, I'll have to clean off all this old gasket sealer, and I got some new high temp gray that I'm going to use to reseal this once I pack it back with grease. And another common thing I've seen break on some of the forums and stuff that people have talked about is this little plastic gear here. Anyway, sometimes it could get stuff in it and maybe strip or break back here over time, but this one's in pretty good shape. Just check your bearings, make sure they don't feel any type of grinding or anything on them. These are really nice and smooth still. And I got the new Sprocket. This is the new Sprocket 1/4 inch. That's the part number for it. I think they're like $6 a piece, so they're pretty cheap, and it comes with these new plates here. So I'm going to be replacing that and greasing it and putting it all back together. One thing I forgot to tell you when you're taking this apart is sometimes this can get a little dinged up here, and you can kind of see some of the wear on this, and it makes these plates hard to get off. They don't want to come off very easy because sometimes it gets a little dinged up. So I just take some 220 grit sandpaper and just kind of clean the edges up a little bit. Once I got these off, and for the new ones, and then they just slide back on there pretty easy. So you might have to do that to yours if it's got some wear like that. Then the bearing with the little long ear like this is the one that goes here, and then the other one goes this side to go to the pole part. So you want to make sure you put your little bar wheeler gear back in here. Move the part together. I'm just going to follow the little tray around just like that. I'm going to take this gear, put just a touch more grease in it. So just put it back together just like that. Take a little bit more grease, put in that hole for the oiler. Then you just take it, put it take my 3 coarse threaded screws, This corner piece can be kind of hard to get in. That just reattaches in there like that. I'll take my new sprocket plates here. First one on, and the new sprocket. So once you get your sprocket seated down on there, I had to tap mine down on there a little bit. Take your next new plate, goes on top like that, and you got your 3 washers here. Take your screw, put them on just like that. Always put a little dab of grease in the screws hole. Put a little drop of grease down here on this chain tensioner. Alright, if you don't want to thread that, you can just take it out and put some grease behind it. So I'm going to install this plate. These little flathead Stihl carburetor adjustment screws work the best for these. When you're ready to put this plate on, put the screw in, put your bar back on, and you're back ready to go. Pretty easy to do. It doesn't say to do that in the manual to change that grease out, but I'm going to do it. Hopefully maybe it'll help this thing last a little bit longer. Pretty easy to do. So if you just simply want to replace your sprocket, then all you do is get your crescent wrench, put on there and remove that screw, and then slide everything off. Get the new sprocket and slide it on. Pretty simple. And you're ready to go. And then the only other part that you really got to be concerned about is when you put this shaft back in. So you can grease the end of this shaft, and I'll put a little drop on there, and it's going to go down in that hole. So you just got to line it up. You're supposed to measure. It tells when you assemble this, you measure back so far and you put a line, and that's where it's supposed to go. This can sometimes be kind of hard to do, to get it lined up just right. There it goes. All right, so I'll put that right on my line there. Then I'm going to take my fine thread screws, and they go in this end. Make sure when you put these in that you don't accidentally change out and put the coarse thread in here. It'll mess these threads up. So I like to snug them down. And what you'll have to do, problem you'll probably run into, is if you take this off and you tighten it down all the way before you put it on your saw, you might put this end in your combi unit, and then you get it tightened down, and then you notice your chainsaw head is turned to the side. So what I like to do is I like to put this in the combi unit first and set it on the ground, and then adjust this to where it's just straight up and down. So that's how I usually get mine where it needs to be. And then make sure you get your manual out and measure and mark this, because you don't want it too close. Otherwise your shaft right here doesn't have any play because it's all the way up against that. So you want it to be able to have some play like this. So once you get it where you want it, then just come back and tighten your screws down. So fill it up with bar oil and adjust your chain, you're ready to go. So it's a pretty simple little thing to do. Hopefully it will make this last longer. This is the first time I've serviced this pole saw like that since I've owned it now, since beginning of last summer. If you watched the video when I bought it, it's done pretty good. I've cut a lot of trees with it. My only complaint I do have that I'm curious to know if your guys is that have one of these does is it tends to leak a lot of bar oil, and that really frustrates me, because when you got the chain shield scabbard on it and you leave bar oil in here and you store it, next time you go to take that off, that little scabbard's just full of oil and it just sits here and leaks out. So I'm not sure what's causing it to do that. I know if you get some debris in that little oiler, sometimes it won't seal off, and it will just leak, but mine's clean and it still does it. So I'm not sure if your guys's did that when it was new. I'm curious to know if yours doesn't leak like that. Please let me know. That way I'll know if there's something I need to replace then that's causing it to leak. But if it is normal for it to leak like that, also let me know what you guys think. If yours leaks too, then it'll probably just be a simple thing as storing it with no bar oil in it. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something in this video.